I was 21 at the time, living in a small off-campus rental house with one roommate. We split the bills, shared groceries when it made sense, and mostly lived our own lives. The house wasn't anything special: 2 bedrooms, a creaky staircase, and a drafty living room, but it was cheap, and cheap meant freedom. One particular week in March, my roommate left to visit her family in Colorado. I stayed behind. Spring break had just started, and I didn't have plans. Honestly, I was looking forward to a week of nothing but junk food, gaming, and sleeping without anyone stomping around upstairs. That Monday night, a massive storm rolled in. The kind that makes you pause your conversation just to listen because it's shaking the walls. The windows rattled, the siding creaked, and the trees outside whipped so hard I thought one might snap. Power flickered a few times, but never went out completely. I knew I wasn't going to fall asleep with all that noise, so I settled in on the couch, grabbed a blanket, and turned on my Xbox. It was a way to distract myself. By the time the clock hit 11 p.m., I was half zoned out, controller in hand, when the front doorbell rang. That single chime cut right through the thunder. I froze. Who in their right mind would be out in weather like this? It wasn't just raining, it was sheets of water slamming against the house. I muted the TV and went to the door. The peephole showed nothing but rain. I hesitated, then cracked the door open just enough to peek out. Cold wind hit me immediately, along with a spray of rain, but no one was there. The street light across the road flickered in the downpour, but the porch and yard were empty. I shut the door fast, heart thumping. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself maybe the storm caused a short and somehow triggered the bell. Dumb explanation, sure, but it was better than the idea that someone had stood there and vanished in the seconds it took me to answer. I went back to the couch and picked up the controller, but I wasn't really playing anymore. I was just staring at the menu screen, listening to the storm. Then came a crash from the backyard. I jumped up and ran to the sliding glass door. Our cheap patio furniture was scattered everywhere, tumbling in the wind. I grabbed my shoes and rushed outside, trying to at least drag the chairs against the house so they wouldn't blow into the neighbor's yard. The rain stung my face, the wind pushed against me, and I could barely see more than a few feet. That's when I noticed it. Someone was standing at the very back of the yard. A figure tall, unmoving, watching. The lightning lit them up for a split second. I couldn't make out details, just that they were facing me. I froze, clutching a chair. My mind scrambled for an explanation. A neighbor? Someone cutting through the yard? But nobody would be out here in this. I forced myself to drag the last chair against the siding, then ran back inside and locked the door. My clothes were soaked, my hands shaking. When I looked back out the glass, the figure was gone. For a long time, I sat there in the living room, phone in hand, just listening. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. Every creak made me jump. Eventually, exhaustion got the better of me. I curled up on the couch with a blanket, telling myself I was being paranoid, that the storm was messing with me. I don't know how long I was out before I woke again. The whole house shook from a violent gust. I sat up, groggy, and that's when I noticed the carpet beneath my feet was wet. Confused, I looked down. There was a puddle right next to the couch, and another, a trail. In the dim glow of the streetlight through the blinds, I could see muddy footprints. They weren't mine, I hadn't tracked mud inside. These were larger, smeared from the rain, stretching from the back door and across the living room. My chest tightened. I slowly followed the prints with my eyes, up toward the staircase. Someone had been inside. Maybe still was. I wanted to bolt out the front door, but the thought of passing the stairs and whatever might be waiting there paralyzed me. Instead, I crept into the corner of the room, phone trembling in my hand, and dialed 911. I whispered to the operator, telling them someone had broken in. She told me to stay calm, stay quiet, and that officers were on their way. Every second dragged like an hour. The only sound was the storm outside and my own breathing. No footsteps, no movement. Just silence. When the police finally arrived, lights flashing across the wet street, I nearly cried from relief. They swept the house top to bottom, nothing, no intruder. No signs of forced entry, just the muddy trail leading from the unlocked back door up the stairs, and then back down again. One officer said it looked like the person hadn't taken anything, hadn't broken anything. Almost like they just wanted to look around, he muttered. That thought unsettled me more than anything. Whoever it was, they had stood in the living room, just feet from where I slept. They'd walked through the house, upstairs, downstairs, and then left. The officers locked the place down, told me to stay somewhere else if I could, and left. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The storm raged until morning, and every shadow felt like someone standing there, watching. To this day, I wonder if it was random, or if whoever came into that house had been watching for a while. If I hadn't woken up when I did, would they have stood over me longer? Or worse? I agreed to house sit for my coworker last summer. She needed someone to water her orchids and check on her tabby while she was out of town for 10 days. Her place was 2 towns over, a sunlit bungalow with tall windows and this ridiculous, perfectly curated porch garden. My apartment was a shoebox, and I liked the idea of sleeping somewhere that actually felt like a house for a little while. It felt like a treat, honestly, like crashing in an Airbnb where I didn't have to pretend to be tidy. I told myself I'd enjoy the quiet, tend to the plants, and binge a stupid amount of shows. The first week was exactly that. I fed the cat, watered the plants, read on the porch, and kept odd hours because the house felt so peaceful. The only odd thing I noticed was that sometimes when I was making coffee in the morning, I'd hear this soft clearing of a throat right outside the kitchen window. Once I went out to check, and there was nothing but the sidewalk and the neighbor's hedges. I told myself it was a bird or someone's car door slamming in the distance. Small towns have little noises for everything. Around the start of the second week late one evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table eating dinner and watching a documentary when I heard a cough so close it sounded like it was right at the back door. It startled me. There are few sounds as intimate and human as that, the way a single cough carries. I stood and switched the back porch light on, then pressed myself against the window and peered out. The yard was empty. No silhouette, no flashlight beam, nothing. Maybe the guy had walked off, I thought. Maybe he'd thought the house was his. I walked to the sink, rinsed my plate, and told the cat, who was calmly lounging in the sunroom, that I was being paranoid. I still walked outside to the side yard before I left to grab takeout. I noticed prints pressed into the thick grass, 2 narrow lines where shoes had walked close to the foundation, then turned and went back toward the street. The grass wasn't mud-stained, just bent and flattened into a clear path. I followed them with my eyes. Sidewalk, yard, edge of the garden, then back. It made no sense. The house sat on a quiet block. People didn't wander the yards at 9 p.m. for fun. When I drove out for food, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I imagined stupid scenarios, some bodega kid looking for a place to smoke, a lost stranger wandering the neighborhood. When I got back, I did another sweep outside and didn't find anything else. I cracked a window and left the screen slightly open, telling myself to not be so jumpy. That night I fell asleep on the couch with my phone on low, cat draped over my ribs like a weighted blanket. At some point I woke to a thin noise, almost like someone dragging their hand along the siding, and sat up. The television was off. The house was silent. I rolled over and checked the time, past midnight. Then I heard footsteps in the front yard, slow and careful, like someone walking along the porch steps and testing the boards. They moved toward the side of the house, pausing for a moment under the kitchen window where I had rinsed my plate hours earlier. I held my breath, convinced the person would see me move and take off. They didn't. After a while, the person circled the house and headed to the back. I heard the soft scrape of a hand on the back door, then nothing. I told myself to stay calm, that there were dozens of explanations. Maybe a wrong house, a drunk, someone seeking shelter. My fingers hovered near the phone, but I didn't call. I hate calling the police over something that might be nothing. I regret that now. Instead, I pulled the throw over my head and tried to sleep. A sound broke the night a little after 2. The basement window shattered, glass spraying across the tiled floor of the mudroom like tiny bells. I bolted upright, the cat leaping off my chest as if launched by the noise, and the world narrowed to the sound of glass tiny and lethal underfoot. I moved at a speed I didn't know I had down the hall, 2 steps at a time, and when I swung into the living room, the front of the house was in chaos. There was a man in there. He wasn't rummaging through drawers or rifling jewelry boxes. He was moving with something that looked very much like intent. He had a hood up and a surgical mask tied over his face. His shirt sleeves were rolled and he carried a metal pipe like someone who was planning to demolish a room for sport. He looked at me like I was an afterthought, like he was thoroughly unimpressed by my presence. He started hitting things. Not purposeful robber-style smashing where the aim is to break a display and grab what falls out. It was random, furious, like he wanted to erase every surface. He broke a framed picture with one swing and kept walking, trashing bookshelves and knocking plants onto the floor. I stood frozen by the staircase, mouth open, a sound caught in my throat, and then he went upstairs. The police siren in my head told me to run, to bolt to the street and scream, but my legs were bricks. I called 911 and somehow got the operator to believe me through the sound of glass and a low, muttered swear that almost sounded like a prayer. She told me officers were en route and to stay calm and put the cat in a room. I did, but the whole operation felt staged like something out of an amateur horror film where the villain hits every mark on a checklist. I ran up the stairs to my friend's bedroom to hide, but before I could close the door, I heard the intruder crash into the guest room and then move toward my friend's closet. The door to my bedroom rattled under his blow's heavy thumps, then the sound of metal striking wood. He managed to pry loose a flimsy strip of paneling and the door gave a little, but he was unable to get it open right away. He cursed in a low voice that made the hairs on my arms prickle. When the panel finally came loose, he didn't look at me. He shoved through the splintered wood and kept wrecking the room, not targeting me, not looking up to see the single person he might have hurt. He seemed to be attacking objects with a mechanical hunger, like he was searching for something in the grain of the furniture or the upholstery. What terrifies me most is how he ignored me. He missed me deliberately or he didn't care. He walked in circles, punching holes through the wall beside my bed, climbing on drawers and tearing them open, throwing pillows across the room, and then he ran past me and went into the hallway as if chasing some scent. It felt personal, but not at all aimed at me, like he was unwrapping the house itself, trying to find what he wanted, and for reasons I still don't understand, not interested in me as a person. Then he was downstairs again, moving fast, and for a moment I thought he might take something, my phone, my bag, anything, but he didn't. He ran out the back door I'd left cracked that afternoon, into the night, and was gone. The cops piled in minutes later, boots on our hardwood and lights spilling down the hall. They combed the rooms, eyes trained on details I didn't see, marks on the baseboards, pry points on windows, a smear in the mudroom. The detective asked me questions I can barely remember answering. Why would someone trash the place and not take anything? Did my friend have enemies? Did she owe anyone money? Did she date anyone with a temper? She had worked in real estate and was kind, but none of the obvious suspects fit. The officer's theory made my stomach sick. Someone who knows the house, the detective said slowly, looking at me over his notebook. They knew where to look. They were hunting something specific. Trash first? Take nothing. It doesn't match a burglary. It matches a search. Search for what, I asked. He had no answer. Not then. My friend cut her trip short and arrived early the next morning. She walked through the wreck of her home like someone who had been punched in the chest. Pictures lay broken, orchids crushed under overturned shelves, the cat skittish beneath the bed with its fur standing like a surprised hedgehog. We took stock: the TV bashed, a smashed lamp, a painting with a hole the size of a fist, but nothing of apparent value gone. That was the strangest part, the destructive focus without theft. She called every person she thought might have a reason to mess with her. Old boyfriends, a former tenant, a client who'd fought a deposit. Nothing. Nobody admitted to it. And if they had a hand in it, they weren't the kind of people who bragged. People suggested a random break-in gone sideways, an addict wrecking a place in rage, a vandal practice run. But that didn't add up either. He hadn't left tags, he'd left no identifying marks, and whatever he wanted, he skipped over it when he saw us both awake. We never found out what he was after. The police processed prints, but didn't get a hit. The footage from the neighbor's security camera showed a hooded figure moving like a shadow. No plate on the car that pulled up, no one to match his gait in any database. Sometimes at night I lie awake wondering if he returned later and found what he couldn't tee in that one frantic hour. Other times I think maybe he never found what he wanted and moved on to someone else's house, testing doors, learning routines, mapping exit paths the way the detective called it, mapping our sleep cycles like a cartographer. The house felt haunted for weeks, not by ghosts, but by the idea of a person who can come inside and methodically destroy a life without ever looking you in the eye. Friends said, sell, move, get new locks. We did change the locks, installed cameras, and took down anything that looked like a marker handmade signs, keepsakes, small things that could mean nothing. My friend finally moved out a month later. The house was sold that fall. She swore she wanted to start fresh, somewhere where she didn't have the memory of splintered wood and orchid petals underfoot. I think about that night a lot. Not the smash of glass or the flash of the bat, but the way he ignored me, how his rage and search were aimed somewhere else. The not knowing is the worst. The idea that a stranger walked through a house, tore its belly out looking for something, passed over a person who was wide awake and did not touch them, that creeps into the corners of everyday life. I lock doors twice, I check windows, and I sleep with the light on more than I should. I never knew what he wanted. Maybe he was trying to erase something, or maybe he was looking for a thing only my friend knew about. Either way, it felt like a warning more than anything else. Someone out there has the patience to walk calmly through another person's life and break it down search by search. And that is the kind of person you want to never meet.